If you're the kind of person that watches a lot of horror movies, you probably know how much of a pain it can be to find one that you've never seen before when this time of year rolls around. So I've gone through and pulled some of my favorite horror movies from over the years that seem to get consistently overlooked to hopefully give you some fresh scares this Halloween season. When it comes to the most compelling horror, it's all in the atmosphere. And atmosphere is exactly where the Blackcoat's daughter really shines, lacing together multiple perspectives to tell a cold, bleak story surrounding two girls that get left behind at a boarding school during winter break and the mysterious, sinister force closing in on them. While not totally unseen, the film's limited release and quiet debut onto digital platforms has sadly made this interesting and well-made horror movie surprisingly easy to miss. Carefully measured sound design, excellent use of location, and lingering cinematography help to underscore the quiet tension boiling constantly behind everything, and a rich, layered score by musician Elvis Perkins blends folk and dissonant atmospherics for one of the most entrancing and unsettling horror soundscapes in recent memory. And while the plot sits comfortably among tropes that we've seen time and time again, its understated delivery allows for the film's stronger tonal elements to take center stage. And the best part is how wonderfully off everything is. Every conversation is awkward and uncomfortable, and people are constantly framed in the darkest corners of rooms. Unspoken suggestions are always hanging heavily in the air, and perpetually uneasy performances and editing work create a movie full of subjectivity and implication, where eerie visuals stay hidden and motivations uncertain up until the very end. And while it's occasionally uneven, the experience as a whole is a thoroughly memorable exploration of helplessness, loss, and isolation that shouldn't be missed.
When do you come back?
After the break. Like everyone else, I should imagine. Is something funny?
Funny? No. Why?
Not every good horror movie looks like one on the surface, and that's certainly the case with Otomo Katsuhiro's 1995 animated anthology film, Memories. While all three of the short films that make up the movie dabble somewhat into the genre of horror, I'd like to focus the spotlight onto the short Magnetic Rose, the first and most impactful of the three, as well as being the only one that fully dives into its horror. The film surrounds a spacefaring salvage team who come across the vast remains of an extravagant and empty space station belonging to an opera singer who disappeared a long time ago. The story unfolds curiously and deliberately with a keen ear for managing tension. Dark, quiet moments of exploring the station's anachronistic Baroque environments early on slowly give way to strange, shifting realities and personalized horrors as its secrets slowly begin to unfurl. This kind of seamless transition does a lot to reinforce the prevailing sense of uncertainty. Surroundings seem to change on a whim, senses of sight, sound, and touch are regularly betrayed, and memories and wishes of the crew members seem to intertwine with those of the apparently animate space station, and it becomes all but impossible to tell where one begins and the other's end. The atmosphere of horror hums constantly in the background, and while not traditionally scary, it manages to tap into the dark, uncomfortable corners of what we know and what we want to believe in a truly effective way. Paired with the beautifully animated visuals, effective performances, and haunting operatic score, the film keeps its grip tight over its brief 40-minute runtime and stands out as a unique and touching horror experience.
ねえママジャム取って。
あーエミリー、またキュウリばっかり残して。
だってキュウリ嫌い。
好き嫌いする子は宇宙に行けないのよ。
そんなの嘘だもん。
本当にもうどこにも行かないで。あなた。
For something that not only features some impressive filmmaking but cranks the horror up a notch, let's turn next to Andrzej Żuławski's 1981 film Possession. At its base, Possession is about the wife of an espionage agent demanding a divorce and refusing to explain why, and the subsequent collapse of their relationship and psyches. But to describe it so simply would be doing a disservice to the strange, winding narrative of doppelgangers, secrets, and sudden violence that follows.
What do you expect of me? Look what you're doing! No one is good or bad, but if you want, I'm the bad one. And if I knew he existed in this world, I would have never had Bob with you.
The highlight of the movie by far is the performances. The whole cast is incredible, captivating, offbeat, and outrageous all at once, cascading rapidly between high emotions with a real sense of energy and sincerity. The chemistry between leads Isabelle Adjani and Sam Neill especially stands out, their scenes together being some of the most intense in the entire film, backed up by fluid, active cinematography that matches the chaotic, shifting story flawlessly. Paired with the film's bleak color palette, skillful editing, and grotesquely convincing practical effects, everything comes together to make even the most benign scenes feel like they're constantly on the cusp of something horrible. The film can be difficult at times, but it's easily a ride worth taking for anyone looking for something intense, surprising, and wildly original.
Do you really care?
Good morning, Pontypool. This is Radio 660, The Beacon. Down here in the dungeon, under the street they call Drum. I'll be banging the drum for you all morning. I'm Grant Mazzy, and as always, I'll be taking no prisoners.
In my heart, there's always been a soft spot for small movies, and one of my favorite small horror movies that no one ever seems to have seen is 2008's Pontypool. And when I say small, I mean small. Almost all of Pontypool takes place in a single location, a small-town radio station in the middle of a brutal Ontario winter. The film revolves around a weary shock jock and his tiny radio team, whose slow morning shift is interrupted by reports of riots, violent attacks, and strange happenings that only seem to get stranger as more and more of the reports come in. The framing of the movie owes a lot to Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, with our characters trapped distant from all that's going on, piecing everything together from scattered, incomplete outside sources, all in the name of keeping the broadcast reporting. But unlike War of the Worlds, these events aren't on a broad, countrywide scale. The reports are coming in from hardly 5 kilometers away. The station team knows these people, taking an already eerie and shocking situation and personalizing it. And through the isolation, hopelessness, and confusion comes a really neat horror movie that, despite being scaled down further than anything else on this list, never loses any of its impact. With likable characters, excellent pacing, and a unique presentation, it manages to be funny, chilling, and weird all at once, engaging from the very beginning and only getting more interesting as it unfolds. It's an odd little gem, but it's definitely worth checking out. With the remake of Dario Argento's Suspiria coming into theaters, there's never been a better time to check out some of his lesser-known films, and perhaps one of the most entertaining in his entire filmography is 1982's Tenebrae. The film follows a horror mystery writer who, after landing in Rome to promote his newest book, finds himself embroiled in a series of murders emulating those in his own work. But much like the other giallo films in Argento's filmography, it's what surrounds the mystery that ends up the most interesting. The story plays heavily into commenting on and criticizing not only giallo films as a genre, but Argento's works as a whole, poking fun at the expected tropes, all the while confronting the relationship that violent, explicit pieces of art like itself and their creators have with the world at large. But through all of that, it still retains the expected hallmarks of Argento's work, complete with buckets of blood, elaborate cinematography, tons of narrative twists, and another great Goblin soundtrack. But most of all, as a movie, Tenebrae is just really, really fun. It's a movie perfect for laughing and cheering along to with a group of friends on a couch, and it'll definitely fill that hole for anyone new to Argento's work and is hungry for more.
Now, Tenebrae is about human perversion and its effects on society. And I'd like to know how you see the effects of deviant behavior on our lives.
Well, first of all, it isn't just about that.
Two of the victims are deviants.
No, wait a minute.
The killer is trying...
Wait a minute. Who says they're deviants? Oh, well, one is gay, but so what? I mean, he's portrayed as perfectly happy. In fact, his relationship with...
The killer's motivation is to eliminate what he calls corruption.
No, the killer is insane. What I mean by that is that...
When it comes to watching werewolf movies around Halloween, the popular choice always seems to be American Werewolf in London. And while it's definitely solid, its success over the years has unfortunately overshadowed another, better werewolf movie that came out the very same year. That movie is Joe Dante's The Howling, a film that, while sharing elements of American Werewolf, manages to surpass it at almost every turn. The movie follows a journalist sent to recover at a rural resort after her terrifying run-in with a serial killer, and the film ties its supernatural elements tightly into this character's heavy story of survival and recovery, and it wraps it all in a sharply paced and engaging mystery. But that isn't to say that it doesn't have fun with the premise either. The werewolves of the movie take their time to fully reveal themselves, but when they do, they're excellent, combining wonderfully campy performances and incredible makeup and practical effects by Rob Bottin, better known for his work creating the amazing creature effects in John Carpenter's The Thing. The effects work ends up taking center stage at certain points of the movie, and boy is it good in this, taking goofy aesthetics of black and white monster movies and merging them with amazing sound design and moving pieces to create some impressive and unsettling moments. All of this together makes for a film that stands the test of time as far more than just a fun effects showcase, proving itself a memorable and effective piece of horror that's well worth adding to your Halloween rotation this year. Takashi Miike isn't an unfamiliar face when it comes to horror, his movie Audition being commonplace and one of the most frequently referenced in any conversation about J-horror. But from deeper within his catalog, still only available as a DVD from 2003, comes Gozu, a surreal nightmare of a film following a young member of the Yakuza on his winding adventure through the outskirts of Nagoya after he's ordered to escort his close friend and associate to his death. Packed to the brim with bizarre characters, memorable, unforgettable moments, and complicated themes, the movie comes as close as you can get to the tone of a David Lynch film without having been made by the man. It's never cheap or hurried with its horror, rather letting its unsettling moments unfurl slowly and deliberately, patiently creeping towards its wild and intense climax. It's a movie drenched in atmosphere, alternatingly shocking and absurd, and at times even surprisingly heartfelt. It's a shame this movie hasn't had more mainstream attention due to its low budget and limited release, because it easily stands up next to great surreal horror films like Antichrist and Lost Highway, and in my opinion even manages to outstrip Audition as the strongest film in the genre. If you can find it and you're up for the ride, definitely give it a watch.
なんだよ。
あんた、名古屋の人間違うやろ。名古屋違うやろ。あんた、名古屋違うやろ。名古屋の人間違うやろ。
To round this list off, I want to talk about something a little different. There's a lot of great horror movies out there, but Threads might be the only one that I could say really captures true, primal horror. Threads is an ostensibly simple movie, omnisciently following a broad and changing cast of characters across Great Britain before, during, and in the aftermath of a world nuclear war. The events of the film are depicted distantly, clinically, and with incredible and horrible realism and cold graphic detail. Threads is more than just a movie about disaster and apocalyptic speculation. It embodies a kind of bleak existential dread. It's about how far we can fall, and how much of it is completely out of our hands. Even characters in positions of authority in the film seem to be in the dark and powerless to do anything about what's going on around them, but to take cover and hope their supplies don't run out, just like everybody else. In the lead up to the bombs falling, we're constantly seeing people eyeing the news, seeing the almost alien shifting of political powers as the world creeps closer to war. Staring at the TV in one scene, one of the characters comments, "It's not like there's anything we can do about it, we might as well enjoy ourselves while we can." And it's these kind of deflections that the film ruthlessly confronts at every step. Never once does it stop to give you a call to action or a sense of control or any other sort of comfort. It's only there to remind you why you might be right to be afraid. Whenever I talk about this movie with people, few want to see it again, but everyone remembers it. It's far from a pleasant watch, but true horror is hard to capture and even harder to forget, and of that, Threads is a bitter, masterful example.